and welcome back to another Lone Angler podcast. If you're new here, buckle up, enjoy. I hope you get a little something out of it. If anything, I always have a good story or two or a recommendation or, some hot tip occasionally sprinkled out through here and there on some fishing. Anyway, this episode here is one that's been long overdue. I had a chance to sit down with my childhood best friend and just talk about life and where our lives have gone and how our angling journey since we were pre-teens has evolved over the years and what angling means to us now. It was a really cool conversation, and him and I have, whenever I go and visit my parents, we usually meet up and talk for hours, and I've always wanted to record one of our conversations, but I kind of didn't want to impose because my guy here, he is a super cool dude, super smart guy. He's one of the best anglers I know, and he's off the grid. He just likes to keep to himself, and he takes the outdoors very personal. It's a personal connection for him, so I didn't want to impose that I record our conversations with each other and throw them out there on the internet. But I mustered up the nutsack to do it, and he's like, "Yeah, man, that'd be cool." So here we are. I'd like to take an opportunity right now before this gets started to thank P3 Plastics for their continued support of the Lone Angler podcast. And you know what? Ice fishing's coming up right around the corner, so now would be a great time to get yourself into the P3 Plastics microplastics game. And I've been using them for years now, and I use them all year round. They're fantastic baits, several different shapes and sizes and colors, and there's even a Lone Angler Pro Pack. That's a great way to get started in the P3 system. Also, big thank you to Ridgetop Outdoors for supporting the Lone Angler podcast. Local bait and tackle shop right here in Bemidji, Minnesota, located right at the corner or the intersection of 71 South and Highway 2 that runs east and west. Perfect spot. Pull over, grab yourself some hooks, some minnows, and get to it. Get to the adventures that await out there. So definitely stop in at Ridgetop Outdoors for your outdoor needs. And without further ado, here's our conversation about our lives together and where angling has taken us. Enjoy.
It's a good idea to refrain from that. Keep it PG.
Yeah, and we're up and running. We're up and running. But, I wanted to thank you first and foremost for the tips on the fly fishing. And tonight when we were out there, I was sitting in the tube and working on my stuff, and I felt like I got a little bit, like I let myself slip behind. Because you and we have kind of done or sparked each other's interests throughout the years together, and I knew you've been fly fishing. How long you been fly fishing?
Well, I don't really know. Probably.
I've never asked you that question.
What is it since we used to musky fish? It started then when we probably 10, 15 years now.
Yeah,
just a guess, but
it's the weekend, so I don't really do math.
Could be longer than that too.
Well, no, let's see. So we actually started going up and musky fishing. I remember one trip I had surgery on my elbows. Remember I was in a cast or whatever.
Oh yeah.
So that was like 90 or 2000, 2001.
I think it was mid 90s when we were still fishing up there, and I was probably dabbling in the fly fishing for muskies.
So yeah, well, you know what? For the sake of doing math on a weekend, we'll just call it 20 years.
Yeah, it's probably pretty close to that.
But when you started, and for some reason, I just now got into it, which is I thank you for. Because every time I'd come to Side Lake to visit, you and I'd meet up, and we're not the type, we don't call each other.
No,
And it kind of drives my mom nuts. She's like, "Have you talked to Shane lately?" And I'm like, "No. Why? What's wrong?" "Nothing." I said, we'll call each other if we've got something really cool to talk about. And it's not that we're not cool people. I think we subconsciously, or at least I subconsciously, wait until I come over here and meet up, and then we do shit like this. We sit and talk for hours.
Oh yeah, it's like we never stop though. That's how it feels, and we never stop sharing these stories and talking about what we're doing now. And it's like we can go years without talking, and then we'll get together and be like, well, like
Just
we're still talking yesterday.
Picked up right where we left off, and that's what's really cool. But you, throughout that 20 years, I knew you were fly fishing and you were really getting into it. And I've always been open-minded about neat new shit. But it just took me a while, and it actually took me a few shitty winters to realize, like, you know what? I really need to do something new. And that's when you, like, it snapped right in my head and, like, hey, I think I want to, like, really this time for real. None of this, like, $60 fly rod combo stuff. Like, let's try this out for real and really do it. So you were, like, the main inspiration for it.
Well,
because you were having loads of fun with it.
Yeah, I'm glad that I can be that for you. That's what I want to do for everyone, and with fly fishing, is to just promote it as an experience that they can enjoy and create your own style and your own way to fly fish, and just have fun with it. And hopefully it takes you to some really cool places that you can talk about, and you can meet new people and have great experiences in life and learn from other people. I'm glad that I can inspire you to do it, because that kind of feeds my everything I do for fly fishing, and inspires me to be better, is seeing new people get into something that I've really enjoyed and created some great memories and experiences doing. And I like to see people pumped about it and stoked on fly fishing, and kind of find their niche, even if it's new or they're picking it up again for the first time in 20 years and they used to do it. But it's all pretty amazing. I love seeing people do that.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more. And there's the whole what really draws me to the fly fishing, and always kind of has, but it's really taken a hold of me now, is the creativity behind it. And we're both hyper creative people. Like, we like to create things, whether it's art or build something or whatnot. So you get that aspect of tying flies, and I think that's where you and I, as I progress and I start learning materials, I think that's where you and I might end up sending more texts and videos of these creations from the lab, because we used to do that with our conventional tackle.
Oh yeah,
we were always modifying and tweaking things and
talking about what's new and what we can get and modify and change in the way that we see it, and trade, and even trading stuff.
I remember that.
Yeah, let's get together and show off our creations and swap them a little bit.
Yeah, we got into, like, making spinner baits and jigs, and I don't know if we ever got into like making flipping jigs, but just round head jigs and stuff like that.
Well, think about how we got into building rods. That was both of us just trying to be creative and create a really cool experience. Really building rods.
You know who we can thank for that? Walto.
Yeah, Walto and Mike Lesh.
And Mike Lesh now, but, like, I remember I was looking for a one-piece 6-foot ultralight, and you just couldn't find them on the rack. And then I think it was your brother said, "Hey, Walto builds rods," so I got a hold of him, and he said, "No, fuck you. You build it yourself. I'll show you how." And he borrowed that Cabela's hand wrapper that anodized gold and anodized
Oh, yeah, I
aluminum
remember
thing.
that, yeah.
It was sitting right down here in the basement. And he showed me how to wrap up the first couple guides, and then he left. And I was on my own, and I remember it took me like, we're going to laugh at this, it took me like 3 days to finish that thing. And when I was done, I was all proud of it. And I remember you were like, oh, that's really super cool. I'd like to do that sometime. And then I really got into the rod building thing, and we kind of took over my little sister's playhouse. And yeah, you started wrapping rods. And I remember looking at that rod, that first rod that I built, and it had these long ass wraps on it. And we had gotten good at it. And it was like, all right. And I remember sitting there with a Dremel, thinking I needed a Dremel to cut the guide off. I wish I had this rod blank here. I still have the rod. And you would be like, I remember that night. For some reason, I thought, okay, I'm going to take this cutoff wheel and I'm going to try to find that gap where the guide foot meets the blank, and I'm going to try to cut it right there. Not knowing that you could just take an X-Acto knife on top of the guide foot and just cut it away and pull the guide off. I remember that. Gouged that blank.
Yep.
That gouge is still there, and that rod has never broke.
Yeah, I remember that. You showed me that.
It's insane. I finally retired it.
That's one of your first rods you ever built.
It is and it's been rewrapped a bunch of times, but I finally retired it a couple of years ago. I want to build a shadow box for it and just put it up, because that thing has caught some big fish. And I think the best part about it is it has lost some big fish. And that's important to not forget those.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's not always about the like we were talking about earlier. It's not about the numbers and what happens there either. It's not about the numbers of fish. It's the unique ones. Some of the greatest memories that I have are the big fish that were lost.
Yeah.
And I always picture that. I picture that day, and I picture that everything about it.
Oh, 100%. Were you in the boat when Mott lost that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it was the three of us.
It was.
And I know
Story
exactly
time,
where
guys.
we were on the lake, and yeah, that was an interesting day, and not so good for Mott. But
no,
when we look back at it, and we can say, wow, that was amazing. That was an amazing experience. I still tell people about that story and that whole lake and what it had the potential for creating is the giant bass. And we went in there and we caught a lot of really nice, really big bass.
Yes. And I don't remember even the size of the ones that we did catch, but that one, all three of us saw it. And it was the biggest largemouth that I've probably seen in a long, long time.
Yeah, it is for sure the largest largemouth that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It had to be at least 8.
Oh, without a doubt.
Easily that. And actually, when I saw it come up and when I saw it take his spinnerbait, I thought it was something completely different. I thought it was a pike or something, a nice sized pike that got wrapped up, and until we got up there and we saw it in the weeds.
Yeah, because it wrapped in the pads, didn't it?
Yeah.
And it just was sitting there, and it just shook, and
we motored up there, thinking, "Oh, we got to get up there and get this fish out." And we all looked down, and we saw that it was a bass, and we were shocked. And Andy reached down to grab it, and got off and swam away. And then it became very eerily silent, and
like the wildlife even stopped moving. It was just.
Yeah,
everything around us was like, "Oh shit, that's not good."
We're like, "Wow, did that just happen?" And I don't know what happened, if we were still standing up or sat down, but it felt like it was a long time when we was quiet and we were just waiting for something to happen. And Andy, I think, stood up and reared back with his rod and slammed it on the side of the boat and exploded it.
Yes. Yep, he did. I also remember none of us fish like right after that moment. We just kind of putted away from that spot, and we went to a completely different spot in the lake.
I don't remember much more after that whole day.
No, I don't know.
I don't
know if we just headed out of there, because it was kind of an adventure to get back there anyway. We had to go through at least one beaver dam.
Oh, it was a couple different. It was flooded timbers and flooded trees just weaving through.
Yeah, and I think matter of fact,
we may have just left the lake.
I think we did. I think just the emotions and the tension, and it wasn't even us. I felt bad for Andy, and it was just kind of like, man, we got to make sure this guy's going to be okay. Let's just get out of here.
Yeah.
No sense in the rest of us fishing, and then all of a sudden somebody else catches a 6 or 7 pounder, and then that just makes everything 10 times is worse, you know?
Yeah, well, it was a weird culmination, because we were going up there just continuous over and over again every day we could in the search for that bass, that big bass, the bass of a lifetime, and that potential maybe state record or bigger, and we knew we were going to find it eventually, as long as the lake
was
stayed.
It Andy that like clued us in on it, because he'd seen it jump a couple times one night when he was up there?
Oh, I don't remember.
I remember him telling me he saw this extremely large bass jumping on this point. Now, where he hooked it wasn't even close to the point. You know which point I'm talking about when you first come in there?
Oh, yeah.
He had seen a large bass right off of that point. And, yeah, I think we started our hunt there, but we ended up hooking it down the shore much further. But I think it was Mott that alluded us to, hey, man, there's a potential state record in this.
Yeah.
And let's go find it. And it was like a team thing. We all agreed that it was like there's a team effort here.
And the search began, and then I think that day it all came to light that, hey, we just did it. We just saw the one we've been chasing for weeks.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And it was a perfect night, too. It was like dead calm, partly cloudy, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I just remember the area being very unique in the way that it was structured. There's tons of flooded timbers and stumps, and then there's an open spot between that and this big weed patch that it got tangled up in.
Yeah.
But that whole lake system was very unique and very different than it is right now.
Oh yeah, it's not even close to that now, because they took apart the main dam.
Yeah.
And drained it all.
Right.
Pretty much.
Yeah. The lake level must have dropped 10 feet.
Oh, at least that. I remember the first time going in there, it was all just about crappies. You know? And then, as we got older and more mobile with driver's licenses and stuff like that, it became this largemouth bass hunt. Or we could have been burned out at the time catching 11, 12-inch crappies by the hundreds. And we just let's try bass fishing this thing. But I remember Andy talking about this unicorn of a largemouth that he saw surface one night. And I love Andy. He's a good dude growing up with him, but looking back, he was always a lot of sparkle in his eyes sometimes. You know? I remember one time fishing trout with him up there. And we were in his canoe, and he had already caught a 22-inch brook trout and was hanging on the stringer. We didn't know at the time that is a large brook trout.
Yeah, that's huge.
And
especially for that area.
And he was all focused on the rainbows. And he laced into a rainbow, and we got to see it a couple of times. It was big. And he dumped it, and he stood up in the canoe and jumped up and down. He's kind of an emotional cat, and I've got a death grip on the edges of both sides of the canoe, and I'm like, sit the F down, man. Just calm down. No, you don't tell me what to do. I said, dude, it's a fish. We know where it lives. It's fine. We can come back in a couple days and maybe hook it again. It's okay. It was just he was nuts. He's nuts like that.
So what happened with that lake we went to, or where he lost that huge largemouth? Did we continue to go back there and in search of that largemouth again? I don't remember a lot of fishing of that lake after that happened. And that's odd that we wouldn't think, well, let's go back there in a week or two. Let's continue to go back there. Or was that the same time that they blew the dam and drained the water shortly after that?
No, that happened many years later. That happened, remember around Side Lake here when everybody was complaining how low the water was? It was like a drought summer or drought year, a couple years of drought. It was really bad.
Yeah.
That's when and it was like that up there. That's when they were like, wow, look at all this water behind this beaver dam that's been here for 100 years. It was one of those kind of beaver dams. Like, it was huge.
It had been there for a long time. And those, in order to fill 4 lakes and the entire surrounding area, like hundreds of feet of timbers and
yes,
and trees and brush, in order to fill that, it had to be many, many years.
Yeah. I mean,
it wasn't just a temporary beaver dam that just appeared.
No, you could walk across there was grass growing on top of it. You could walk. There was a beaten path across the top of that thing. Yeah. We used to walk out there and just chuck spinnerbaits off there and catch a nice largemouth. And so I think we just didn't go back, just kind of what we do sometimes, like, well, that was it. Okay, let's move on. Let's do something else or something. Or it could have been at that time where we were all starting to go our separate ways after high school.
Yeah, it could have been.
I think it was right towards the end of our high school careers when we were doing that.
Yeah, I think so.
And then it was just, Andy probably got a full-time job, and we just started going.
Drew went on different adventures and went to college or moved away and went other places.
Had we had laced into that thing when we were like, 16 or whatever, we would have probably spent 4 years just going after that one fish.
Yeah. So we did fish that system a lot though.
Oh yeah.
Before he hooked into that one.
Yeah. I'd say I probably got a couple $100 worth of spinnerbaits up there in those trees.
Oh yeah.
Somewhere.
We used to go everywhere and in search of big bass. We used to fish everywhere. That was our mission then, and that was our focus. We just bass fished.
And we weren't. And this is what I thought was cool, is it wasn't about just catching bass. It was about looking for the big ones, the trophies.
Oh, yeah.
Like we still to this day are like, man, well, now that I have a boat, don't have a boat anymore. We don't really talk about it, but I always had a boat, and it was like, man, we've got to go out there in the fall and fish for that one bite. Because you've seen them snorkeling. I've seen them spearing and looking, sight fishing bluegills, absolute monstrous largemouth bass, potentially. And some people that are listening to this be like, whatever, but potentially double-digit fish.
Yeah.
And we've always said, hey, we got to go out here in the fall, big baits, fish for one bite, accepting the fact that we may not even get bit. And if we get bit, there's a good chance it's going to be a big pike and not the bass. But fish for that one fish, but we just never, we never got around to it.
Well, we did occasionally.
A little bit,
but
yeah.
It was just long, long days, and I think we were just in a different mode back then, and we, after doing a full day of something like that and not catching a fish or catching maybe one, we just thought, well, wow, this is a big system. Maybe we're going about it all wrong. Maybe we should change our tactics and figure out something else. And it's just kind of a daunting thing that we set out to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a system that had huge largemouth, but they're really hard to find.
Yeah,
not like all the other lakes we were fishing where we knew there's like super structure in these lakes and we could find these big largemouth everywhere. This is completely different. This is like, I don't know, solving a riddle. Where are they and where do they go?
Right. Yes, exactly. And I don't know, I've always appreciated how you and I like have this unspoken methodology about fishing that's the same kind of. And even as we were talking about it today, as we went out fly fishing, just this little swamp pond looking thing, just knowing that there's fish in there. We weren't really upset, worried about the quality of the fish, but it was more about getting some fly casting time together and whatnot. But that how we still like to just fish for one big fish, but it's also changed into dabbling into other species over the years.
Oh yeah. Yeah, a lot like today. I thought it was really cool too that we both went out there with different things in mind, but a similar idea. We're gonna see if we can find something unique in a big fish. And you were going for bluegills, and I was going for largemouth.
Mm-hmm.
And I specifically was throwing something that was oversized and giant, just in hopes that, well, I'll hopefully get something big and weed out the little ones. I don't want the little ones to even bite. And that's kind of where I'm at right now with all types of fishing. I know I told you about a story of steelhead fishing, and
mm-hmm.
In the recent couple of years I've learned to spay cast and spay fish, and I just wanted to experience steelhead fishing in a different, somewhat very traditional way, and in a very active way, instead of bouncing an egg pattern down through the river in front of the fish, which is basically forcing them to feed or eat it. And I just wanted to do it differently. And I know I said it, I say it to everyone. I say I'd rather do that now and fish with the spay rod and spay cast and catch one fish in a year rather than sit in a pool of steelhead and pull them out of a pool, pull 20 fish out of a pool in a day and do it that way. I just get more enjoyment from doing it in the spay casting way. It's more active. You're connected a little differently to nature and the surroundings and the active fish, and it's just more interesting.
Yeah.
More creative in a lot of ways.
I think the word challenge should be in there too, because I know for me, I like the quest of the journey that comes along with a new challenge. Much whether I'm learning how to fly fish or I'm trying to, and I've been working on it for years, the seasonal movements of rock bass. And people might laugh, but you show me the literature. You can find like spawning temperatures and stuff like that, but fall patterns for rock bass. I've never seen that article. I've never seen the article for dog days of rock bassing, because I've caught them in 4 feet of water, and I've caught them over 40 feet of water, in and out of with or without ice. So it's like, and I've been asked, how do you target rock bass? I get lucky and I dumb into them because they travel in packs like coyotes. I just happen to be that guy all the time that will lace into a giant rock bass and be like, well, guess we're staying right here and having some fun. I haven't really figured it out, but there's that mystery there that you also like too. Like, let's try to figure this out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it usually brings you to fishing for fish that aren't usually sought after.
And the same thing could be said about like techniques. Like, you're into fly fishing, and then you learn about this spey casting, and you're like, well, that writes a new challenge for you, and that kind of leads into that. If I can catch one fish on this spey rod, I have double thumbs up, light the fireworks, let's party. And now, I think it was earlier this summer when we met up and visited. You were talking about skagit casting.
Yeah.
Which is another. Is it another form of spey casting, or is it? It's an entirely different thing.
It's another. It's just a type of spey casting.
So like there you go. You've you haven't mastered, but you've got a good handle on the spey, and now you're like, I need to challenge myself yet once again.
Oh yeah.
I think that's a healthy mentality or a healthy behavior to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Challenge yourself and challenge yourself to do new things, try new things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whether it's a new species or a new technique, I don't know. For the past 20 years, I've been really addicted to just hunting for that one bite. Whether it's a bluegill or a smallmouth bass or a walleye. And I know I talk about it. I've talked about you as I was like getting into the fly fishing, and I'd laid out this like almost like this plan. I want to learn how to fly cast, and I want to learn how to set the hooks and cast it, using the panfish thing. And then I want to climb up these rings, and much like your spey cast in steelhead, that's what I want to do. I just want to catch one big smallmouth on an 8-weight or a 6-weight or 7-weight on a streamer with sinking line. That's what I want to do. And what comes after that, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I could be calling you and be like, hey, dude, I know it's summertime and you're off work. Let's roll and try some salt. I've never saltwater fished, but you would be the guy I'd want to go with.
Yeah, that's a whole different game, but it can be very similar to the roots of us fly fishing up here.
Yeah.
But some people say that's a tarpon and bonefish they're the pinnacle of fly fishing. It's very similar to other people saying that steelhead in the northwest and British Columbia is the pinnacle of fly fishing. Which it is. It's everybody enjoys different parts of it.
Yeah.
It's whatever they think is satisfying to them, or an experience that they want to kind of have for themselves.
Yeah, I've heard that same thing about carp on the fly. Like there was a time like around Lake Michigan, like getting a carp on the fly. If you were able to do that, that was like a chalk that off the list, because I guess it's extremely hard to do.
Oh yeah, or sheep's head, or any of those unique species.
Well, before we hit record, we were thumbing through Instagram and that podcast, Noob in the Knower, from the boys from Fly Fish Food. Little shout out to those guys, big fans. The cover or the picture they put up to advertise their new streamer episode is a dude holding a bowfin. And we were like, whoa. I'm like, yeah, that's a whole new challenge. That's wire leader streamer or frog topwater stuff, but you're also in the jungle. That translates to me, in just my very limited knowledge of fly casting. That's some heavyweight shit there.
Yeah.
That isn't, hey, I want to learn how to fly fish and I'm going to target bowfin. Like, hold on. That's like getting a driver's license and being like, let's head down to Brainerd International Raceway and do some funny car action. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe some people are just like that and just want to jump right off the cliff. I don't know.
Well, it's fine to do that, but there's a learning curve also when you're getting into fly fishing, and some people catch on right away and learn those little intricate tricks on how to cast, and but it usually takes a little while to get used to it and fish for whatever you want, but start out maybe fishing for something you're familiar with until you kind of hone those skills on casting or even fly tying.
Yeah.
And creating something that's
very
useful and creative.
Yeah.
And then move on to those. But yeah, definitely having those goals of going after those unique species in a different way is really cool, and it brings out the best of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've talked about it on here before. Like the thing that started the engine for me on this was I was watching Fly versus Jerk on YouTube. It's a series out of Sweden, and there's a 2-man team with fly rods versus I think 4 or 5 teams, 2-man teams of guys throwing conventional tackle for pike. And the fly guys, I don't think have won it ever. Maybe they have. There's a lot of them. There's like 13 of these series out there, I think. The first time I watched it, these dudes came in second. The fly guys came in second place the last day of the tournament, and they boated 4 pike over 40 inches on fly rods. And I was like, that is fucking cool. I want to learn how to do something like that eventually.
That's what happened to me for muskies. It changed the game for me when I built my first 8-weight fly rod that I specifically built for muskies, and I started putting a streamer's idea together. I thought, well, I want to try throwing something different, because after so many years of casting with regular casting gear and big bucktails and spinner baits, it's like, what's next? These fish have seen everything, right?
Right. And that muskie fishery sees more action than one thinks.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's well known.
It was like, why haven't I caught any fish on this traditional gear now? And throw it, and the fish aren't interested. So let's try to figure out what will work, what'll get them interested in chasing or eating something different.
Showing them something different.
Yep. And that the first time I went in there, I thought I had these giant streamers. I had some that were like 12-inch streamers and kind of like double hooks, and what I realized is those fish were after those giant streamers like I've never seen before. And I don't know if it's just the fact that it was different. It was something different they've never seen before, or what it was, maybe the colors, and it just changed everything for me. I thought, wow, this is incredible to be able to do this and to get so many muskies to bite, because everybody knows that muskies are a fish of 10,000 casts usually.
Yeah, they're kind of. It used to be. It's different now. I mean, they're still hard to get. And I think it's cool that, because usually living where I live in muskie country, usually when a dude's like, you know what, I think I'm gonna try a little muskie fishing. If it's the guy's known as a bass guy or a walleye guy, all of a sudden, you just, when you hear him say that phrase, you're like, all right, dude, well, see ya. What's gonna happen is you're gonna figure 8 one, see one, and the next thing you know, you're gonna be sleeping 2 hours a day and tracking every inch movement of the moon. Because that's usually what happens with these dudes. They just they try it and then they're like, oh wow, that was really fun. I'm gonna pick up a musky rod and a couple of baits, and then it's like, hey man, holy shit, I haven't seen you in 5 years, and they're just like, yeah man, yeah, I just been musky fishing. That's it. And hold on a second. Oh man, okay, moonrise is at this time, so I gotta go. Like, whoa, shit. Okay, well, we'll catch you around in a few more years, dude. Which is mad respect, because a lot of what they do is a lot of the things that we like to do. They're hunting for a giant fish. It's just it takes it to a different level that we have come close to but haven't fully gone in on. I don't think you know what I'm saying. And they become hyper obsessed, which is kind of neat.
Well, I know I definitely have that when I started fly fishing. When I started fly fishing in Dark River, especially for trout and steelhead, I have to admit it became an obsessive thing, and it was probably not super healthy.
Well,
when you live and breathe fly fishing and everything, and it gets to be a lot.
Well,
and
I mean,
there's
a lot worse things in this world that could be, addicted to or obsessed with, you know. But I see nothing wrong with being gone for 2 weeks and living out of the back of your truck out in the middle of the woods on the North Shore. I think that's badass, dude.
Yeah, I still like it. I'll still do it. I haven't, but I've learned to slow things down, though. Like we were talking about earlier, I've learned to kind of take my time and enjoy the little moments of waking up early in the morning and going out and fishing on the river, and then coming back and sitting there and thinking about whether or not you caught anything. If you did, just enjoy that moment and that memory of that fish, and having a nice cup of coffee after putting in 4 hours from 5 o'clock in the morning on the river, and being tired and sore, and just sitting there and realizing that this is all about you in nature, and just the whole morning was amazing.
Yeah. Oh, I get it, man. And one thing I would love for you to do, I wish I would have done more of this. I dabbled in it here and there. I'd do it for a couple of years and then not do it and whatnot. And, and I think about this every time we get together and we start telling old stories and going over old adventures and stuff like. But I think it's never too late, but it'd be really cool if you would journal.
I think that's a great idea.
I started doing it, and I've talked about it on here, and
I've thought about it, and I plan to do it, but I just haven't started it. I need to do that.
It's I got it here because I knew I was going to do a little fishing, so I'm going to journal what we did today, even though there wasn't no giant fish, but I had this experience. I want to write it down because I want to be able to look back on it, or eventually I'd like to, when I'm done with my journals, I'd like to give them to my daughter, my fishing journals.
Oh, that'd be amazing. And
just be like, here, hold on to these and read through them if you like. This is what goes on in your dad's head a lot of times.
I think as we get older, we have already got there where we want to pass on a lot of these experiences and the knowledge we have onto others, and your daughter is a perfect way to do that, and that would be amazing. I find it very difficult for me to journal because I find it difficult to put that experience into words, and it might not even seem like it's a unique day or experience that I have on the river or fishing somewhere or fly fishing somewhere, but I struggle with putting words to that and that experience. and it's just an unusual thing to do. I should practice that, because I become better at it with practice.
Well, and when I picked it back up again, I had those exact same thoughts. I was like, man, do I want to try to like lay it out so that you're reading it? When you're reading it, like it brings you to that moment. But then I realized it's a journal. I'm not writing a book. So what I've done is just been like, all right, and you'll see as I go through, I kind of keep sort of a format. And then I've those moments where it's like a real big high, there's more of that of a breakdown in detail of that day. Then comes the other finer details of, what the wind, weather, species caught, total fish. Those are all custom things that you could do or not do. But I've kind of allowed myself, so like this entry here that I'm going to write when you and I went, that will be more wordage than the fish were in this feet of water, blah, 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 blah. No, I'm going to write about this experience. You fishing off your paddleboard. I'm learning how to fly fish. We went to this pothole swamp lake that we visited as kids and did things that I can't say on here, and it's still there, and it's fun. I'm just going to write about that experience of the day. I don't care about the water temp and the wind direction and the surf, any of that stuff. But I'm still going to enter it in my journal, my fishing journal, because I fished it, and I want to remember that experience better. But there'll be other, you know what I'm saying?
I think I have to do the same thing. I think I have to step back and put it into perspective in a way that I shouldn't think about this journal as being like someone else's journal.
Yeah, you're not going to publish it.
Yeah, right. And I have to tell a story in my own way. And I think mine would come from more of a almost a personal science, biological, environmental, nature type focused journal, where I would find myself probably talking about the things that I enjoy at the river that people might be surprised by and not necessarily think of. And that's things like the invertebrates and the insects that live in the water.
Yeah.
That's what I really like, kind of obsess about, and I'm a nerd about that stuff.
And that could definitely be part of it.
Yeah, and I just have to realize it's okay to journal about that stuff. It's not a bad thing.
No.
And it's my journal, and I'm not doing it for something else, for some other reason.
Right. Yeah, you're not like I said, you're not publishing it out there to try to teach anybody anything or have this storybook out there. The other thing I was going to tell you that I tell myself is I let my day write my entry. Whether I need to have a super amount of detail or whether I just want to write about Crafty shit his pants and I want to write 2 paragraphs about that. That's what my journal will be. Sorry, Crafty. He's never done that. Not that I know of. He may have. I'm not sure. He's good. He's sneaky. But you know what I mean? Let the day dictate your entry.
Yeah, but I would definitely try to write about something unique that happened in the day.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And there's a lot of those. I have a lot of those stories that I still tell people about different things I've seen.
And that doesn't necessarily have to be on the water either.
Oh yeah.
Because where you travel to fly fish, crazy, you could see a Sasquatch riding a moose. That'd definitely be an entry in the journal for sure.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of really interesting things. I've seen coyotes and fox cross the river in front of me, mink, and I've seen wolves chewing on deer bones up on the dark river where I go hike into, stuff like that. And those would be really cool to tell those stories.
You would be, you'd be a good guy for that because you're a detail creative person. I just think you would enjoy doing it once if you didn't overthink it and just let the day dictate your entry, like I was saying, and you just don't worry about any formats or anything like that. But at the same time, I'd also be like, yo, doc, can I read? Because it's not,
Oh, yeah.
it's not about secret spots some people do that with their journals. I put lake names in mine, and I probably wouldn't want to just throw it out to anybody, but I would be like, yo, dude, here's my year. And I would like to propose, if you start journaling, I would like to propose that those few times that we get together in a year, be like, we just don't say a word, just hand each other books. I would love that.
Yeah, that'd be a cool idea.
That'd be a lot of fun, man.
I'd be down for that. That'd be fun. Well, I'm all about promoting people getting in the outdoors and getting into nature and enjoying it, and whatever gets you there, do it. It could be fly fishing. We know that that's kind of why we started building our rods and going in that direction that we are now. We're now, and you're getting back into fly fishing and tying your own flies. But what are we ultimately doing? We're telling a story to promote people going out and enjoying nature and having great experiences, making friends along the way, and sharing those memories and great experiences. And that's really what it's all about. It has nothing to do with going out and you have to catch fish to be happy.
Yeah.
It's not like that.
Earlier today I was down talking with my cousin John, who, he works at Ford. He lives in Dearborn, Michigan, but him and his wife, and I think this is rad. And again, we've talked about each other, like when we see something cool, it's like, do I want to put that on my plate? Because we dive in head first, full blast. A lot of times, I do anyway. They're bird watchers. They've been doing this for years, and John even made a magnetic deal for the back of their Bronco. It says, caution, we'll stop for birds. And they're telling me they've got a bird book. They write down the species and all this stuff and where they've seen them. And they've even gone as far as upgrading their camera and glass. And like, if they're talking about going to Hawk Ridge in Duluth or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And I guess you're up so high that you can see the tops of the hawks as they migrate south, something like that. He's already talking about, they found a place online where they can rent these lenses that a dude would drop $8,000 on. You can rent them for like a month and whatnot. And they've done that. They've gone to like Florida and stuff before, and they've rented a lens just because they want to. They're cataloging birds. And that's what gets them outdoors. They're not. John has never been much of a fisherman, but he loves the outdoors. But now he's really into photography and bird watching, and they've made friends that they went the first time they went to the Zach Zim Bog in the winter to do the owl deal. They met some people. Hey, I'm so and so. I'm so and so. I'm from here. I'm from there, and they found each other on social media, and they now swap bird pictures around. Hey, check out this cool wobbler that I found, blah, blah. And, oh, that's awesome. And it just like in fishing, you make these friends along the way. And, I know people that are hyper obsessed about flathead catfish. I know people that are hyper obsessed about walleyes and largemouth and smallmouth, and they're all cool and they all have their own stories, and it's awesome that everybody can come together and just talk about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just had that conversation with two friends today. They're back here from Hood River, Oregon, and I just gave them a couple fly rods not too long ago, maybe a couple of years ago, and if anybody knows anything about the area there, it's incredible for fly fishing. It's right on the Columbia and the Deschutes River, and there's opportunities to fly fish out there. But they're starting new at it, and they're super into it. And I just told them what I would do, and I gave them some advice on gear and flies, and I said, just remember, it's not about the fish that you catch. It doesn't make or break the day for you, whether you catch a fish or not catch a fish, and how many. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with getting out on a really cool river in nature and just taking everything in and enjoying it, and as a bonus, maybe I'll catch a nice fish.
Yeah. You know what you just said there is something that I'm coming back to. Because that's how it used to be when we were kids. You know, and then, yeah, I'm kind of coming back to that. Hey, man, I was out there. And, yeah, I caught some fish, but, man, was that fun. And it wasn't when I say, man, that was fun, it wasn't so much about the fish. It was about I'm, kicking in the float tube and I'm relaxing, and I'm in this spot that people would be like, wow, that's incredible. How did you get there? How did you do that? I don't know. There's just, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, for example, look at what we used to do in going into Shannon Lake. We used to have great fishing experiences and horrible fishing experiences. Something horribly goes wrong every time we go into that lake system and we fish, right?
Yeah.
Look what happened to us a few times. Our motor breaks down at the downwind side of the lake, and we have to paddle all the way across it, or oar all the way across it through
my prop
waves and white caps.
Yeah.
Just hours of trying to paddle and oar. And then what happened when we went out there and we were fishing? Flip the boat over, we go for a swim, lose a bunch of our gear.
That was in that John boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
But look at it, though. We keep going back. And why were we there?
You know what? I don't even remember if we caught any fish that time, but I remember all of a sudden, holy shit, I'm underwater.
Yeah. And we look back and we just laugh. But yeah, it's just a fun experience.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's good. And like when we talked tonight out there, I was snapping some candid pictures of you, and I said, I could see myself eventually, and I've actually kind of done it before, where I just like reel up my shit. I'm really not into fishing, but the light, I just want to capture my buddy fishing and just take a bazillion pictures, even with my phone. Who cares? And that's starting to lead me into, for the last couple of years, I've been doing a lot of research on cameras, and like I could see myself, if I go fishing 10 times, I could see 8 of those times eventually putting the rod down and just being like, you know what, dude, I'm just going to do photography the rest of the day. And you don't even have to be catching fish. Just, I want to create something and just be like, dude, check out this picture. And you're like, when did you take that? That's awesome. Because I've done it before. And there's just, but you're still out there in the outdoors and you're still experiencing that. This spring, I was out with my buddy Crafty and another dude, and crappies were up in the reeds, spring. So they were getting ready to spawn or spawning, and the last few years I haven't done that. Well, it's been quite a few years. Just me personally don't feel like ripping fish off the beds, even if you're releasing them. I just don't want to do that. But I wanted to go out with those guys. I didn't want to sit at home. So I brought the fly rod. It was ultra windy, and I'm still novice at casting and stuff, but I brought it to show that I'm going to do something. But I didn't take a bunch of pictures, but I was the net man. as these guys were catching fish.
Yeah.
And I had a friggin' great time. They eventually got out of the wind and stuff and said, hey, man, why don't you catch some fly rod? And so I ended up catching a bluegill on a little streamer. And I was like, cool, I'm done. That was awesome. And I packed it back up, and I'm like, just stood there with the net, and I'm like, you boys fish. I'm having a great time. And they kept, here, dude, use my rod. You take a few. I don't want to, man. I just don't. I'm enjoying not fishing, but I am enjoying being in the boat. And they thought it was super weird, but I liked it.
Yeah, you know what else is great and super rewarding is doing that for kids, like you have done for your daughter and other kids, teaching them what you know about fishing and the experiences, helping them to catch fish.
Oh yeah,
and do that. It's incredible. It's incredibly rewarding. Helping even adults, helping them learn how to fly fish for the first time.
Hopefully someday I can do that.
And putting them on fish.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I enjoy that flow tube so much. I wish you could have been there when Ellen came home up to my place, and I had it all inflated, and I had it in her room. She's got her suitcase and whatnot, and she opens the door, and she's like, you really did? I'm like, yeah, that's your boat. And she was just like, Dad, we got to go. I'm like, well, we got to unpack. We can do unpack later. I want to go. And, she was nervous and excited. And now, she was like, Dad, do you think I can bring this back with me? I'm like, well, your mom and stepdad, they don't really fish, and there's really not that many good places to go where you're at in that part of Tennessee. I mean, if you want to, I can ship it down to you, but I don't think you're going to be going too much. And her mom loved flow tube fishing too. She just loved the flow tube. She was jealous that Ellen got one. She's like, I miss those things. And she's like, Dad, big thumbs up. You did good. You got her a flow tube. That's awesome. But she knows that it's there and it's back, and she's got her own. In this, the first time I took her out, I've talked about it on here. Like, the independence that she got from having her own vessel was amazing. I unclipped it, and she was all nervous, and you got this. And she practiced, and next thing you know, she was like, I'm going over here. Okay. And then that led into letting her figure out the tangles of the spinning reel. Obviously I'm going to help,
Yeah.
but she was able to get most of them out except for one. I saw her like pulling, and she's like, and she's like, and I knew what happened is the line went up underneath the spool, which even with a grown person, once you realize that that's happened, it's like, oh fuck, this is a mess, right? So I went over there and I showed her, okay, I'll show you how to do this. And if you're not comfortable doing this, that's fine, but you got to take the reel apart to get the line out. And she's like, yeah, I'll have you do that next time. I was like, well, try not to let it happen next time. But to watch that person, or whether it's my daughter or somebody else, do something that they don't know how to do for the first time and have a tiny, even the slightest bit of success is, like you said, very rewarding. There's just something cool about that. I dig it.
Yeah.
And hopefully that someday I'll be able to do that with a fly rod.
And that's one of the reasons why I still build fly rods and give them to people and teach them how to fly fish. That's because of it. If I didn't feel any type of enjoyment in seeing other people learn that skill and be able to do that, and I don't know, I'd probably not be making them. That's kind of where I'm at now, and it's just cool. It's really, really great to be able to pass that on.
Yeah, man, I 100% agree. You know that Loomis fly rod that I left for you to rewrap?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's yours.
Sweet.
That's yours. It's a little 3-weight.
Yeah, but
that's after I
Actually,
after I left, I was like, I'm probably never going to use that. It was like the first fly rod I ever built.
well,
And I'm like, you know what? He can take it in, if you want to, you rewrap it like I asked and whatnot. But if you want to use it, great. If you want to pass it down to somebody, great. But it's yours.
actually, what I should do is I will fix it and kind of repair it and tighten things up on it and do that, and then you can gift it to your daughter, and it can be a combination gift from you
And you.
and me, and that'll be a really cool thing for
No,
her to get into in the future.
Now that you said that, when she came home this summer, over the winter I'd set up my fly tying table that I built and got all my shit laying out, and she was like, she'd seen it on FaceTime and stuff, but then she saw it in person. She's like, wow, this is really cool. And I just was like joking around. It's like, you want to learn how to fly fish? I mean, she just learned how to use a spinning rod. She's like, yeah, that'd be cool. And I was like, oh, okay. And I never even thought of that until you just said that now. Like, okay. That would be really cool to learn how to fly fish at 9 or 10 years old.
Oh, yeah.
She'll be 10 next summer.
Yeah.
And you know what? What I've been talking about, like, what I'm fighting through now, all this muscle memory, and like, oh shit, I can't do it like that. Snap the rod and flick that bait out. It doesn't work like that. She has zero muscle memory.
Yeah.
She has no crazy anything to like try to work through.
Right. She might pick it up right away and be able to.
And I've heard that.
Cast pretty quick, faster than us old folks that try to learn new things.
Matter of fact,
try to create that muscle memory.
I reached out to Mad River Outfitters on their website. I emailed them and I asked them one time, I'm like, what would you recommend for a kid? Teaching like a 9 or a 10-year-old how to fly fish. Well, no need a special. They emailed me back, no special rod here, and they went along and gave a few options. You're obviously not going to buy a $1,500 Orvis or NRX or anything like that, but like Echo makes a really cool one for kids. It's called the Echo Gecko, and I guess it's phenomenal. Even adults are like, man, this rod kicks ass. But he went on to say, like, and by the way, kids that have never fly fished or never fished really pick up fly fishing it's way easier to teach them to fly cast than it is to run a spinning reel. And I kind of get that. That makes sense. There's no crazy mechanics going on down on the reel.
Yes.
And they just naturally want to whip shit.
Yeah, and especially in the fishing world where she is fishing bluegills with you, it's perfect. Mm-hmm. It's a perfect introduction to something she's familiar with, and she can paddle out with her float tube and have all the space.
And I just thought of this right now. And she loves you anyway, Uncle Shane. But she lives in Tennessee. And there's great fly fishing in Tennessee. Like more opportunities here than here in Minnesota. And it's not just bluegills and bass. Like they've got like legit trout and shit.
Yeah.
Trout streams and whatnot, especially in the eastern part over in the Smoky Mountains and whatnot. But like, matter of fact, I think one of her friend's mom is really into fly fishing down there. So that could be that.
Well, when you introduce her to that this next year, she can probably take it back with her.
Yeah. You know what? When she comes back next summer, I think the three of us will do some bug chucking.
Oh, yeah.
And, hopefully, I know we're in the fall, but I still plan on trying to fly fish as much as I can before things get ridiculously cold. But I think definitely with you, I mean, she could probably pick up casting pretty quick.
Oh, yeah. A couple of days, I bet she'd get it.
And I think Yeah, Ellen would have, she would have a blast. She would have an absolute blast, especially once she laced into one bluegill. She'd be like, oh my God. I took her out ice fishing. She thought that was okay. It was cold for her. I get it. She only spends 10 days out of a winter up here, so, she's not really fully set up with the good. She's got enough to keep her somewhat warm, but not like several hours on the lake type warm clothes. This is just like walking around on the streets kind of clothing. But she thought it was kind of cool, but But the summer stuff, she's all about that. She wants to go fishing all the time. And being that we have our flow tubes, it was an exceptionally windy summer. It was like, well, we can go, Ellen, but your little legs, you'd be in one spot, about 10 feet offshore. There's white caps on Bemidji. It was like 30-mile-an-hour winds.
Oh, yeah. Well, in teaching her how to fly fish, we'll teach her all the different areas and the different type of fish too. So you don't have to have access to a boat or big water type situations, and you can fish from a lot of different places and catch a lot of different types of fish, just like we do for moon eyes or some of those oddball fish that
we should probably mention that
people don't fish for. That'd be a perfect one. Take her up there on the river.
Yeah,
we can go with a boat or without a boat and just fish from shore, and she'd have a blast.
Oh yeah, moon eyes,
and that's perfect. That's fly fishing at its finest, is fishing for moon eyes. They can be pretty finicky. Tiny little bugs.
Tiny little bugs, and like you said, if they miss or you don't hook them, time to move on. You're not gonna. It's not like a bluegill where, like tonight, there was two of the bluegill I caught. I whiffed on the hook set and they had it all the way down. All of a sudden, bloop, my hopper popped up on top. I was like, okay. I just twitched it again and he came right back and smacked it. But there again, that the moon eye is a great example of what we talked about before about this. Like, I don't know anybody else that intentionally targets moon eyes.
Yeah, I don't know anybody that
does.
But every once in a while you hear somebody.
You've also caught what you thought was up on the North Shore. You caught a moon eye, didn't you?
No.
You were somewhere and you were like, you caught this really big moon eye. And you didn't quite know what it was. Then you figured it out. I could have swore it was up that way.
No, it could have been the Sturgeon River the first time I ever caught one.
Could have been. Yeah, maybe.
Well, I was.
Anyway, you were just like, holy cow, I can catch these things. I want to figure this out. That's cool.
Yeah, they're unique. They're only in this system of rivers here, the Red River and the other rivers that flow into Rainy and then that way up into Canada that way.
Yeah,
but they're just a super unique fish and they're just fun.
And the Red River also has not only moon eye, but they have golden eye too, which look like a moon eye, but they got a really yellow iris, I believe it is. Yeah, it's cool. I'd love to try to get a sheep's head on the fly. I think that would be pretty cool. A freshwater drum, that would be cool. Yeah. I thought about trying for suckers. It would. I'm not on the fly, but on a fly rod. I thought, man, I just hook a little bit of crawler and just like let it lay on the bottom. But I think you could. Well, you could possibly get them on a small crayfish pattern.
Yeah, it'd be like a nymph or jigging somehow. But at that point, why? You're just fishing like a regular. Traditional.
Is that your thoughts on like Euro nymphing?
No, I like Euro nymphing, and I've spent years and years specifically just nymphing and catching tons of trout on nymphs and doing it that way. But I don't know. I have nothing against it. It's still fly fishing, but when you're jigging stuff on the bottom, or if you're gonna go for suckers, and I don't know.
Yeah,
if
I
you
see
can-
what you're saying.
I don't know. Depends on how you want to define it as fly fishing or not. If you're just using your fly rod as a way to get out there and jig, and you're gonna just land the fish on
Yeah.
a fly rod, but you're using traditional tackle like a jig and night crawler, then
Yeah, no,
I don't know that I wouldn't call it that.
yeah. Well, there's actual fly pattern that uses. It's kind of common. It uses a Northland gumdrop, floating gumdrop hook. It's like a little crappie slider.
We catch suckers up on the North Shore when we're steelhead fishing.
Really?
If you're drifting egg sac patterns and stuff like that, you'll catch a lot of suckers.
Oh wow! It'd be fun because those things pull hard, man. They're
They do all right.
they're powerful fish.
Not anything compared to steelhead though. So if you're fishing for steelhead and you hook into a sucker, it's like, this is not a steelhead.
Yeah, and I have no experience. I've never caught a steelhead. And I don't know. I don't like to eat trout, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I won't try trout fishing with a fly rod. That's one thing that, I mean, I get it. There's a lot of people fly fish for trout. And when I, said, hey, I'm going to start fly fishing, I'm like, oh, where's there trout around here? I'm like, well, you don't have to catch trout with a fly rod. You can catch anything.
That's true. I would encourage people to fish for whatever they like to fish for. It doesn't have to be trout.
Yeah, and you start looking up fly fishing on the internet, and you'll find that. I mean, just look at Larry Dahlberg. He's got a bunch of like tippet records out there for fly fishing. Like he's caught marlin on a fly rod.
Wow.
Oh yeah. There's sharks. Different. When you say sharks, the first one that pops to mind is the almighty great white, but black tips can be caught on fly rods, and I mean, if it's a fish, I mean, I don't know how you'd get a sturgeon on a fly rod, but just about everything else can be caught on a fly rod.
Well, there's people that do that. They just set up their rods, whatever their weight their rods are. They set them up with some heavy other gear and heavy line, and just do it that way. Yeah, you can catch just about every species of fish on a fly rod.
Yeah, I don't know. So I'm not going to say that I'll never fish for trout with a fly rod, because I probably will at some point. I just don't. I just won't. Much like my normal conventional angling, I just kind of like got burned out on bass fishing and was like, you know what? There's all kinds of other opportunities. So I'd like to just fish for a lot of things. And like I've joked around and said, I'd rather be good at a bunch of shit than a master of one.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of like, cool knife, bro, but I have a utility, or I have a multipliers. It does all kinds of shit.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just that's just the way I work, I guess.
Yeah.
You're kind of that same way.
Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. Whatever fish you like catching.
I get it, man. It's just fun.
It's
life is
all
good.
about what you want to. What you get out of it. What you enjoy. Really. I enjoy the trout fishing because it's. I try to do it in a way that I'm immersed in nature and in every possible way. I try to be creative with that and experience, and I try to figure out what the insect life is like in the river and what the trout are living like. What are they doing at different times, and what's nature like at that time? What's the ecosystem like, and what's really happening there? And I've realized that it's rewarding when you do it all in that way, and you tie your own flies to mimic a giant stonefly or something, and you see huge brook trout come flying out of their holding spot and attack something like that, something that you've created and made.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's a cool feeling.
Yeah. And yeah, fly tying, I'm really looking forward to winter, and it's not so much for punching holes in the frozen lakes. It's more of bench time. I got to go through, just like you just recently did. I got to clean mine up, straighten up, organize, take a little bit of inventory. I want to start slowly getting in some supplies for winter so that I can just sit down, and there's just something cool. And I can't remember who I was talking to, but we were talking about fly tying, and I said, the difference is, it's not about being creative. The difference is you go and buy a crankbait, and that's what it is. You got one lure. You buy fly tying stuff, and now you have 25 lures. Depending on how many hooks come in the pack, there's always more than one. You know what I mean? And then it's this blank canvas, and there's whatever you think you want to come up with. Chances are you'll catch a fish on it too.
Absolutely.
And
I like
that's
that.
what's cool.
I like that philosophy or that idea too. I just told those two friends the same thing. I gave them a bunch of my flies that I use, and it's probably only 3 or 4 different flies that I've learned over the years, and traveling everywhere, going out west, going through Oregon and Idaho and Montana. It's my go-to, and I said, this is what I like to use, and I'd be okay with throwing this everywhere in every river I go to now, because I've learned that it works great and it catches every fish. And I told them, I said, you can have these flies, but figure it out for yourself. Figure out what you like to use in your own technique that allows you to have similar experiences. If you like to throw a different fly and realize that, man, this is great. I catch a lot of fish on this, and I can be on the river and fish those spots that I want to fish in or hang out in, and do that. Don't go by what I'm telling you that you should use or anybody else tells you, and kind of figure it out for yourself. Definitely, there's a lot of good advice out there. There's guides all over, and there's professional fishermen that'll definitely give you good pointers and good advice on what to use in specific rivers. But be creative though too, and think outside the box, because that's how I figured out that one of my flies that I use works on every river and every fish out there. I used one thing to catch all the fish. And
and I know which fly you're talking about, and I think what happened, and maybe you've thought of this or haven't thought of this, but what you did out west when you were trout fishing, now that you're telling me this, it's very similar to your muskie experience. Like, what you threw out there and caught all your fish on, those fish don't normally see.
Oh yeah, and it's not the only thing that I used out there, by far.
Right.
I used a ton of other flies. I just experimented. I saw it as, oh, okay, I'm gonna try this. I've never fished this river before, but
okay,
maybe they're gonna be interested in this, and I just went down the whole variety of flies that I had and tied a whole bunch on until I got to one that actually worked. And then I realized, wow, if all these fish passed on these other flies and took this one, I'll stick with this one for a while.
Right. Which isn't much different than conventional tackle.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah.
I've also had, and I'm sure a lot of people that are listening can relate to. I've been in the boat probably with you at some point too, where you're just, one after another, and I'm got the exact same friggin' jig on, doing the exact same thing, and I ain't getting nothing. And I've never unlocked that mystery. I'm sure it's happened to you.
Oh yeah.
In our fishing travels these last 40 some years, I've never I don't know what the deal is with that.
But I've also never been interested in like switching up my bait to something that looks like or is exactly like somebody else's that's in the same boat catching all the fish.
Right.
I'm like, I'm gonna stick with this just to see what happens, or change up to something else. And
I still do that. If I'm out there, whether I'm walleye fishing or bass fishing, bluegill fishing or whatever, you're going to do that? I'm going to try this and just try to figure out what's going to work for the day.
Yeah, test it.
Yeah.
Everybody has some ideas in their head. For example, a few years ago, I was in this brook trout river, and I know it pretty well, so I know these really consistent good spots to go to where I expect there to be fish. And I went to a spot, and I had a fly that I had tied on myself, and or tied myself. It was a giant stonefly, and I had previously learned that, man, these brook trout, even the small ones and the big ones, and they are devouring these. They're chasing these giant stoneflies, and so I had a giant stonefly, and when I say giant, I mean size like 4 or 6, and that's huge. That's huge for fishing for brook trout, because most people would say they're using size 12s to size 16s which are really small flies. So I learned from trial and error that these brook trout are eating these giant stoneflies, and so I thought, okay, I'm going to use this today. So I drift it, and I'm fishing from above the fish, so I drift it down behind this big tree and overturned stump, and I see this really nice brook trout come up, grab it, and release it before I set the hook. And I was like, ooh. And usually you don't get a second shot. They do that, they're done, they're gone. And so I waited a couple seconds, and I drifted it back down, just thinking, well, maybe it's gonna grab it again. And it came up, grabbed it, and I missed it again. The second time, I thought, wow, that's rare that you would take it even a second time. And I missed it twice. That's bad on me. Like, all right. Well, now I'm going to do something different. I'm going to take that off, and I'm going to test a bunch of my other nymphs and other flies in my box, just to see if they're even worth having here in the river. See what this fish does. So I tied on a whole bunch of different flies, little nymphs and a couple dry flies, and it didn't react to any of the dry flies that I drifted over, and it was in about 3 feet of water. And so I started experimenting with some of the little nymphs, and put those on. A couple of the nymphs, the fish came out of its little hiding spot and came up to it and looked at it and dove right back down. But a majority of them, that fish never even looked at it and came up and showed zero interest. So so my little experiment was done. Now I thought, okay, I'm going to leave the area for a while. I'll come back an hour or so later, maybe after I go upriver and fish a different section. So I did that, and I came back, and I threw that same giant stonefly back down there and caught that fish. Ended up being a 15-inch brook trout, beautiful brook trout that I got pictures of, and just goes to show, just try different things, and you never know what's going to work until you try it and figure it out. Right.
You just, you got to see with your own eyes, like, yep, definitely wants a stonefly. And I muffed it up a few times, so I'm going to walk away. I'm going to let him cool down. And then maybe he'll forget about it and be like, all right, waiting for the next one. Oh, that's...
And it doesn't happen that way very often, where that fish would even come up for a stonefly a third time. It's pretty rare.
Yeah.
But it happened, and it was fun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you what, man. All that fresh air, and my arm's a little sore. Just fighting that muscle memory. Oh, man. But
I'll just wait until you start casting those 8 weights and 10 weights.
Well, hopefully I have quite a few more hours under my belt before I start dabbling in that. And, I might over the winter buy the rod or whatnot. Just let it kind of sit. No, if I'm gonna be using sinking lines and stuff like that, I'm gonna have to. It'll probably be an easier transition, but I'll still have to like you told me it's gonna cast different from what I'm learning right now.
Oh yeah, the same technique will apply, but it's just gonna be, it's gonna be a little more difficult to do. That's all.
Right. And when we were messing around in the yard the other night, I had tied a pop can top on there. And then we took that off because you're like, week one, you could hear it, which I was like kind of picking up the auditory, like, oh, that sounded good. Well, we took that off, and because there was a lot of resistance, much more resistance flying through the air than a normal fly. I kind of figured out after a little bit. Things started happening, but I think I'll never forget. That'll be part of my journal entry too. This might be a 2-pager, but this whole weekend. But you had an older fiberglass rod, and I had my graphite one, and you're like, let's switch. You try this one, and you were like, dude, your loops, everything is beautiful. You're doing great. You know what you're doing. All right. And I'd go back to that other one. Well, we determined that fiberglass rod was what, 8 foot or 8.5 foot?
Yeah,
and it's fiberglass, but that was the key part. It's a slower rod. And then you were like, dude, instead of going back to that like 2 o'clock, stop at noon and then go forward.
Yeah, the difference in those rods was actually dramatic, and it was a lot. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even think about that. I obviously, we both knew that they're very different, and one being a fast action versus a slow, and the rod just wasn't loading the same, and I felt it after I went back to it and realized that, hey, I'll stop at about 12 o'clock instead of 2 o'clock, and the cast is so much better, and it just flows nice. And
that next morning, my mom's like, you want some breakfast? No, I'm just going to have this protein coffee. I'm going to go out and practice casting. And all right, here we go. Noonish. Yeah. I actually did that in the yard. I physically did the old fist pump, like, yeah, there it is, nice and straight, and everything was working out. And I don't know.
So you can create muscle memory when you're our age.
Old dogs can learn new tricks. I love that. Oh man. Now though, like I said though, I just wanted to thank you, man, for just, well, I mean, we've been best friends since we were little kids, and just, going on that life journey with you, and continuing that, and just having this unspoken common interests in a lot of things, like that same mentality, even though we don't talk much, but we just connect, and we have a lot of the same ideas about fishing and angling, and I'm kind of coming down from it all. Like you have an Instagram page and that's it. And you post bug pictures. You're not a sponsored by anybody or anything like that. And if you are, that's great. I've been that. I've done that. I just don't do that anymore. And I'm kind of coming down and going back to what we talked about at the beginning of this podcast of just being in the outdoors and in living that moment. I had great moments in angling, and I appreciate a lot of the opportunities that I got in angling, whether it was, pro staffing for various ice fishing companies, building rods for companies, fishing on TV with the Fish Addictions crew. It was all great and stuff. But I kind of lost that, what we've been talking about, that those, like, I can remember a lot of it, but not in the way that I'll remember this evening.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can see that. And it also, I didn't know how I was going to, I know we've talked about going back to this lake and fishing it, but, a lot of people don't know that we have a lot of experience in creating that ecosystem and fishing that when we were younger, when we started out fishing. But just to go back and do that today, it definitely puts things into perspective in a different way. That, hey, 20 some years ago or 30 years ago, we were on this lake. That was the last time we were on that lake. And look at us now. We're back on this lake, and it just kind of brings back those really cool experiences and memories that it's still
alive,
a cool thing, and we're enjoying time on this little lake, and in very different ways than we used to. But look at us now. We're still talking about it like we used to when we were kids.
When we first started messing with that lake, I never even thought that we'd be 47, 48 years old and fucking fly fishing it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said. Oh man, you're kind of writing my thing for me. I mean, there's a lot to be said for that. I mean, I think, especially in this area, I've moved away from here, and I come back and I visit, and I think, well, we've kind of done the same thing, or we'll have that opportunity on other lakes that we will go to, but we're doing it completely different than what we used to when we were kids.
Yeah. And we're going to enjoy it in a much different way too. And we will probably appreciate it more than we did.
Well, I was just going to say, we'll probably appreciate it more, but it won't depreciate those moments from our youth.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If anything, it'll be that, like you just said, like, wow, look at us now. If we could have some sort of time machine and come back and be like, show our younger selves these old dudes fly fishing, they'd be like, what the fuck are they doing? Weirdos. And here we are. Yeah. It kind of hits you a little different.
Well,
it's cool.
It just goes to show that we've changed in ways and
grown,
and those changes, they're okay.
It's just a different growth.
Yeah.
I think I would have never said, 30 years ago that we were going to be just wanting to fly fish and be super chill and all that kind of stuff. 30 years ago, it was like, I want to be on the cover of Bassmaster magazine. I wanted to. I mean, bass was I mean, I remember when one of us would get the Bass Pro Shops master catalog. It was like, dude, I got it. All right, Mom, bring me up to Shane's, man. I've got the catalog, and we sit down with notebooks and fucking. Oh yeah, I want like 4 of these rubber alligators. Like, what the hell are you thinking? But we was like, oh, dude, those would be killer up here. We used to buy the dumbest shit. It was crazy. But at the same time, some of those lures that were really weird, I'd like to see them come back. And matter of fact, I had a guy on the podcast named Sam Larson, and he is product development and marketing guy for Northland, who bought Bagley. And I said to Sam on the podcast, I was like, yo, dude, can you bring back the original grass rat? Remember that balsa wood upside down boat looking thing with a skirt on it? But dude, we caught a ton of fish on that.
I just passed those. I had a couple of those old grass rats. I passed them on to my buddy's little boy. He's 6 years old. He uses those all the time. He catches tons of fish on those. And you know what else he uses? He uses those rubber grass frogs.
Yes. Those were made by Strike King.
Yeah. I gave him some of those. I gave him a black one and a brown one, and those things.
Now you're going to have to break a little kid's heart and be like, give me those sons of bitches.
No, he's got those, man.
No, that's awesome.
He's a fishing fanatic. He's cool.
You know, that's some good advice. If you've got old tackle, pass it down to a kid.
Absolutely.
It doesn't even have to be old, just like unused tackle or tackle you just don't use anymore. Like, you know, man, I bought these crankbaits and I never use them. Instead of throwing them on marketplaces, pass them down to some kid.
Yeah, and share your story. Share your story with them, because they'll be storytellers soon. They'll be able to pass those stories on to other people too.
Yeah.
Young people.
Oh,
that kid, he's got some stories already, boy. Wow.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Should we call it a night, man? It's like 10:30.
Yeah. Wow. Time flies when you're on this and having fun and talking about
hour 39 minutes.
Good old days. Wow.
Hour 39, but yeah, we can wrap this up. But yeah, man, I just want to thank you for everything over all of our lives together. It's been fun, and I think you and I have a unique growing up in friendship that, you know, we never really lost that sync, and at a moment's notice we could call each other and be like, hey, I've got this cool idea, and I'm always down for it, and you're always down for it. Hey, let's try something new. Yeah, man, I'm game. Because we both know a lot of people that are like, no, that doesn't sound like it'd be very productive. Yeah, well, you never know. Well, no, you can go ahead. You've always been down for that kind of stuff, and I appreciate that, man.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been great, and we'll have a lot more time and experience to do new things now. We're always looking for new adventures and new things to do.
And maybe someday, if the stars align, we can be snowbirds and be like, yo, dog, see you on the beach with the fly rod.
Yeah.
Go chase or we'll go chase some baby tarpon in the mangroves or some shit. I don't know. I'll still have a float tube or whatever, but whatever.
That'd be super cool to do.
Yep, that'd be pretty sweet, man. Well, I think we're gonna call it a night. I'm 2 bubblies deep, so that means I'll be up 18 times in the middle of the night to pee because I'm old now.
Oh yeah.
You know, I can't make her through the night without a trip to the John, and that's just life, man.
Yeah.
But always, again, like I tell you, even when we're not doing a podcast, doors always open Bemidji, man. Even if
Awesome.
you want to come
Yeah.
over some winter when it's just going to be shitty, and just sit and tie flies and hang
Yeah.
out in a different environment, or even if you want to go catch some giant rock bass.
Yeah, the winters get pretty long. Last year was.
That's one thing I learned in my fly tying adventures. A lot of these fly tiers that I follow and stuff, they call it tying season, and that's the dead ass of winter when like nothing's going on. They're like, that's fly tying season, dude. You never heard of that? Nope, never heard of it. No, that's when you hunker down every weekend and you fill your fly boxes. I'm like, that sounds like it'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, easier said than done.
Yeah,
When you're obsessed with being in the outdoors every day,
yeah.
so it's tough to slow that down. And,
I think it's a little bit
and
easier
hold
though
tight.
in northern Minnesota when you're like,
Yeah.
what's the high today?
And it gets easier when you're this old too.
Yeah. What's the high today? 48 below without the wind. What's the wind? 7. Yeah, I'm gonna tie up some flies. 100%. I don't even have to think about that one.
Tie flies and build rods.
Build rods, yeah. And
Pass it on.
I still go through moments where, man, maybe I should. But then I look at my fly tying table and I'm like, there ain't no room for a wrapper there, and I ain't got any other room. So I'll leave that up to you. You keep doing that.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Let's get out of here. See
right.
ya all later.
Thanks, buddy.
Later, man.